While I can pretty confidently say The Last Jedi is the best of the Star Wars sequel trilogy, I still think the movie has some problems. It chooses to divide our characters into three separate subplots that more or less coalesce together at the end of the movie, which felt weird to me, and for a while I couldn't articulate why. In the Art of the Last Jedi book, Rian Johnson defends his choice to split up Finn and Rey, saying he needed to take away their security blankets in order for each of them to grow. That sounds okay in theory, but in practice I don't think this works at all for several reasons. I've said before, it feels to me that Finn's character journey in The Last Jedi feels redundant after what he went through in Force Awakens. In Force Awakens, he's willing to risk his life multiple times going up against the forces of evil. So it never worked for me that his big come to Qui-Gon moment in Last Jedi is that he needs to pledge allegiance to the rebellion, when I thought he was already there in Force Awakens. So to say that Finn needs to be separated from Rey in order to grow, only for him to apparently have developed amnesia from his coma, and he regresses on his character development from the previous movie anyway, that feels hollow. And Poe didn't have much development in Force Awakens. He serves the same function R2 did in A New Hope, push your hero onto the path of the story. Without Poe held captive by the First Order, Finn doesn't have anything to push him into that path, so the movie clumsily gets rid of Poe because he's served his purpose. Then I guess they realized they needed somebody to blow some stuff up, so they bring him back. Did anybody question that Poe had to have left Finn to die in the crashed ship once they landed? I'm 99% sure that was in the cards at one point, looking at the early concept art for the movie. It's also a strange choice since 2/3 of the way through your trilogy, you still don't know what the dynamic between your new leads even is. We've briefly seen Poe and Finn interact, and Finn and Rey, but Poe hasn't had a conversation with Rey. Look at the original trilogy. You know the dynamic between Luke, Han, and Leia before you send Luke away from the other two, which is why that works in Empire, but it doesn't work in Last Jedi. Sci-fi fantasy author Brandon Sanderson has talked about how each story is composed of your promise, progress, and payoff. I look at a trilogy as one big story, with a massive promise, progress, and payoff covering all three movies, while each movie making up the trilogy also has their own smaller promise, progress, and payoff. Your promise in Force Awakens is basically, hey, here's some characters. And Last Jedi once again promises, hey, here's some characters. It doesn't do any progress on what was set up in the previous movie. Rey does go through some progress. She and Finn thought the Jedi were just a myth, and now she gets to find out who and what the real Luke Skywalker is, so that is progression. And incidentally, Rey's portion of the movie was the only one I unequivocally loved. It feels to me, since Poe was barely even introduced in Force Awakens, that this movie needed to find something for him to do, so his immaturity gets a lot of good people killed, and he finds out that was bad. And Finn is just going through the motions of what he did in Force Awakens. In terms of the entire trilogy, it is a bad execution of the promise, progress, payoff model. Only one character is actually progressing, while another is going through a rerun, and the third is going through something new not set up in the promise portion of this overall trilogy. As a movie on its own, how are the promise, progress, and payoffs in The Last Jedi? Well, Rey's journey is still the best handled of the three. She starts the movie thinking Luke is the typical mentor figure who will teach her the ways of the Force so she can save the galaxy. Then she finds out Luke isn't some mythic archetype, he's a human being, followable, and his actions have consequences. Too bad that idea didn't spill over into another portion of the movie, but even though the movie throws a curveball toward Rey's expectations, she still ends up getting what she expected in the promise at the beginning of the movie. She's more attuned with the Force, and might be able to help the Resistance defeat the bad guys, using the lessons she learned during the progress portion of the movie. Finn's journey is all over the place. He likes the lifestyle of the 1%, then he's told they're all arms dealers, then that part doesn't really come back into play. He reluctantly trusts the guy his gut tells him not to trust, before finding out he was right not to trust that guy. Would have been nice if some of the stuff from the Rey portion of the movie had spilled over here, like finding out there's good people who have done bad things, and bad people who have done some good things. Maybe the Collector betrayed Finn and Rose to save his family, and Finn could see, oh, things aren't quite as black and white as Rose was telling me earlier. Just a thought. At the end of the movie, Rose kisses Finn, and there weren't any signposts leading to this. It just happens. And I don't have a problem with this relationship, but some buildup would have been cool. Poe's journey plays out in a pretty standard way. Much like Rey, he thinks he knows what he's doing and how to do it, then he finds out he wasn't as smart as he thought he was. The difference is, it feels more gradual with Rey, while Poe, seconds before getting knocked out by Leia, still thinks he's all that and a bag of chips, and only comes to the payoff of his journey right at the end. It makes it feel like there's not a lot of progress, just the promise and then the payoff near the very end. But it doesn't matter if The Last Jedi on its own handled the three Ps well, which I would say it just did an okay job of it. But it doesn't matter because The Last Jedi is not a movie on its own. It's part of a larger piece, which is what rubs me the wrong way. It wants to just be its own thing. Who cares about the rest of the trilogy? If you don't want to do a trilogy, then just don't do it. Do the James Bond thing. thing. You could have 27 standalone movies. Or try the MCU thing, where it's a very large saga, but there's still a structure where each piece exists as part of the whole while also existing on their own terms. But you can't be the peanut butter in a peanut butter sandwich and expect audiences to ignore the bread. The Last Jedi is some not bad peanut butter, but it is still part of a sandwich, much as it wishes we the audience could pretend otherwise.